Chosen one, you've never put on a show like this. Now your name is in shoot rooms. Talitsfeng, what if the very thing you've been ashamed of is the exact thing that's about to open a door you never even knew existed? What if every time you thought you were failing quietly, in private, unseen, someone was actually watching, and what they saw was something extraordinary? I want you to stop for a second before you scroll past this, because what you're about to hear was not written for everyone. It was written for the one person who's been performing a kind of quiet endurance nobody applauded. And tonight, that endurance is being recognized somewhere you can't yet see. Your name is already being spoken in rooms you've never stepped into. Do you feel that? That strange shift, like something has been noticing you the entire time? You've been carrying this feeling, haven't you? Like you're doing everything right, and still nobody's watching. Like you show up, you try, you give more than you have some days, and the applause never comes. The recognition never comes. The moment where someone finally says, "I see what you've been carrying," never comes. So you start to wonder if it even matters, if anyone even notices. If you're just going through the motions in a life that nobody's paying attention to. Have you ever felt completely invisible in a room full of people, like your effort disappears the second it leaves your hands? That invisibility you feel, it's not what you think it is. And that's exactly where we're going today. The performance, no one clap. For think about the moments in your life where you held everything together and nobody knew what it cost you. The smile you gave at work while something inside you was breaking. The patience you showed your family while you were exhausted beyond words. The strength you displayed in front of people who never once asked if you were okay. That was a performance, a real one, maybe the most important one of your life. And here's the thing about performances that happen without an audience. They don't disappear just because nobody clapped. They still happened. They still mattered. They were still witnessed by something greater than the room you were standing in. Has it ever occurred to you that the moments you thought no one saw were actually the moments that mattered most? Why the unseen work builds the real unibody becomes remarkable in front of an audience. They become remarkable long before the audience arrives. In the quiet, unglamorous hours where no one is watching and there's no reward waiting at the end of the effort. Think of every person you've ever admired for their strength or their talent. Before anyone knew their name, there were years of showing up when it would have been easier to quit. Years of practicing something nobody praised. Years of enduring something nobody understood. That invisible stretch wasn't wasted time. It was the foundation being poured, one unseen day at a time, for a structure that would eventually be too strong to ignore. What have you been quietly building in the dark that you assumed nobody would ever notice? If this is starting to feel personal, that's exactly the point of this message. Subscribe now, because part 2 goes even deeper into what happens the moment that invisible work finally gets seen. The room you didn't know you were already. In here's something that will shift how you see your entire life. Recognition doesn't always arrive the way you expect it to. Sometimes you're already being talked about, already being considered, already being placed into rooms of opportunity. Long before you ever get an invitation, you can see doors open in stages. First, someone notices. Then, someone mentions your name where you weren't present to hear it. Then, an opportunity quietly shifts in your direction, and it looks like coincidence, but it isn't. By the time you actually walk through the door, the room already knew you were coming. Have you had unexplainable good things happen recently that felt random, but somehow arrived at exactly the right time. That's not luck. That's a door that's been opening long before you noticed the handle turning. The cost of being misunderstood, being chosen for something rare, almost never feels like being chosen. It usually feels like being misunderstood. People around you don't always recognize what you're capable of because what you're capable of hasn't happened yet. They're only judging what they can currently see. So you get overlooked, underestimated, passed over for people who performed confidence louder than you did, even if their substance didn't match the volume. That's a particular kind of pain, being quietly exceptional in a world that only rewards what's loud. Have you ever known, deep down, that you were capable of more than anyone around you gave you credit for? That gap between what you know and what others see, that's not proof you're wrong about yourself. That's proof the room hasn't caught up yet. Why your story doesn't need validation to be true. Here's a truth that will set something free in you. You don't need someone else's belief in order for your gift to be real. Your talent doesn't wait for permission. Your worth doesn't need a witness to exist. So many people delay believing in themselves until someone else believes first. They wait for the compliment, the offer, the invitation, before they'll let themselves feel capable. But what if you flipped that order? What if you believed first, fully, quietly, without needing proof, and let the world catch up to what you already knew? What would change in your life if you stopped waiting for permission to know your own value? If this question is landing somewhere real in you, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because this is only the beginning of what we're going to uncover together. The people who will never applaud you, and why that's okay. Some people in your life were never going to be your audience. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you were never meant to perform for them. Their silence about your growth, their lack of celebration when you accomplish something, that's not a verdict on your worth. It's simply proof they were never the room you were building toward. There is a room out there, filled with people who will actually understand what it took for you to get here, who will recognize your work without needing it explained, who will celebrate you the way you deserve to be celebrated all along. You haven't found that room yet, but it's real and it's closer than you think. Have you been trying to earn applause from people who were never capable of giving it? Stop performing for the wrong room. The right one is coming. What it means to be chosen for something rare. Being chosen doesn't mean being picked because you're the loudest, or the most polished, or the most obviously talented in the room. It often means being selected because of something quieter. Your consistency when no one asked you to be consistent. Your integrity when cutting corners would have been easier. Your refusal to give up on something everyone else abandoned. Those qualities don't get noticed quickly. They get noticed eventually by people who are actually paying attention to substance instead of surface. And when they finally see it, they don't just compliment you. They open doors for you because they trust what they've observed. What qualities in you have been quietly consistent, even when nobody was watching or rewarding it? Those are the exact qualities that are opening doors for you right now, even if you can't see them yet. The moment everything shifts. There's a particular moment that happens in every story like this. A moment where all that invisible effort suddenly becomes visible all at once. It doesn't usually happen gradually. It happens like a switch flipping. One day you're unnoticed, and then, seemingly overnight, you're the person everyone's talking about, wondering how they missed you for so long. That moment isn't luck. It's the natural result of everything you've been building quietly, finally reaching critical mass. Every unseen hour, every ignored effort, every quiet act of integrity. It was all compounding, invisibly, until it couldn't stay hidden anymore. Do you feel like you might be closer to that moment than you realize? You've spent so much of your life performing without applause, believing in yourself without proof, and showing up in rooms where nobody clapped. But none of that was wasted. Every unseen hour was building toward something you couldn't see yet. And that something is closer than you think. Your name is already moving through rooms you haven't entered. Doors are already shifting in your direction. And the recognition you've been quietly hoping for isn't as far away as your loneliest nights have made it feel. This is only part 1. Part 2 goes deeper into exactly how that recognition finds you, and what to do the moment it finally arrives. If this message reached something real in you tonight, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because part 2 continues exactly where this left off, and you won't want to miss where this goes. Keep showing up. The room is closer than you think. Synthesized fresh narrative direction while honoring established foundation. Synthesized fresh narrative direction while honoring established foundation. We talked about the performance nobody clapped for, the invisible work, the rooms already whispering your name before you ever walked in. So let me ask you something before we go further today. What happens once you actually get invited in? What happens when the door finally opens and you're standing in a room you spent years preparing for without knowing it? Because here's something nobody warns you about. Being chosen isn't the finish line. It's a whole new test. And today, we're talking about what it actually costs to walk into a room you're not used to being in. Are you ready for the part after the invitation? The problem. Here's what almost nobody tells you about finally getting noticed. It can feel terrifying, not exciting. You spent so long being overlooked that being seen suddenly feels exposing. You spent so long adjusting to invisibility that visibility feels like standing under a spotlight with no script. And underneath the excitement, there's a quieter fear. What if they see me and realize I don't actually belong here? That fear has a name. It's the fear that recognition finally arrives, and instead of feeling like relief, it feels like pressure. Have you ever wanted something so badly, and then felt strangely afraid the moment it finally showed up? That fear doesn't mean you're not ready. It just means something real is actually happening. Thali Kallald, I don't belong here. The moment you step into a room you've earned, a very specific lie tends to show up right behind you. It whispers that you're an imposter, that everyone else in that room got there through talent, and you got there through luck. That any minute now, someone's going to realize you're not supposed to be there and quietly ask you to leave. Here's the truth that lie doesn't want you to hear. Rooms like that don't open by accident. Nobody stumbles into exclusive spaces through pure chance. If you're standing there, it's because something about your work, your consistency, your character earned that door opening. Even if you can't trace the exact moment it happened. Have you ever caught yourself feeling like a fraud in a place you actually worked hard to reach? That feeling isn't evidence against you. It's just proof you're stepping into something bigger than your old self-image was built to hold. Why? Growth always feels like a threat. First, anytime you step into a new level, some part of you resists it, even if you've wanted it your entire life. That's not weakness. That's how growth works. Your mind is wired to protect the identity it already knows, even when that identity is smaller than who you're capable of becoming. So when the new opportunity shows up, The new room, the new recognition. Part of you will instinctively want to shrink back to what's familiar, because familiar feels safer than unknown, even when familiar was actually painful. Have you ever pulled back from something good, right when it started to feel real, simply because it felt unfamiliar? That instinct kept you safe once. But you're not in that season anymore, and it's allowed to quiet down now. If this is resonating with something you've felt but never named, that's exactly why this series keeps going deeper. Subscribe now, because part 3 is where we talk about how to actually hold your ground once you're finally in that room. The difference between being chosen and being ready. Here's an important distinction. Being chosen and feeling ready are two completely different things. And you don't need both at the same time. Almost nobody feels fully ready when their moment arrives. The people who eventually thrive in exclusive rooms weren't the ones who felt the most confident walking in. They were the ones who walked in anyway, uncertain, and let the room teach them the rest. Readiness isn't a prerequisite for opportunity. It's often the result of accepting the opportunity before you feel ready for it. If you waited until you felt completely ready to take the next step, would you ever take it at all? Chosen doesn't mean certain. It just means it's your turn to find out what you're capable of, what the room actually sees in you. It's worth pausing here to ask, what exactly earned you this attention? Because it's rarely what people assume. It's rarely the loudest presentation, the flashiest moment, or the most polished performance. More often, it's something quieter and far more valuable. Your reliability under pressure, your honesty when it would have been easier to exaggerate, the way you treated people when there was nothing to gain from being kind, those things are rare. Rarer than talent, honestly. And the people who run exclusive rooms, the ones who actually matter, not just the ones who look important, they're trained to spot substance because they've been burned too many times by people who only had style. What quiet quality do you have that you've never thought of as impressive, but that others might actually value more than you realize? Handling the attention without losing yourself. Here's something worth preparing for now, before it happens. Attention changes the air around you. People treat you differently. Opportunities multiply. And in the middle of that shift, it's easy to lose the exact qualities that got you noticed in the first place. Because suddenly, you're trying to perform for an audience instead of simply being yourself. The version of you that earned this moment wasn't performing. They were just consistent, honest, and quietly excellent. Don't trade that in for a performance the moment people start watching. The room didn't choose a character. It chose you. Can you commit to staying exactly who you were in the unseen years, even now that you're being seen? That's the difference between a moment and a legacy. Why some people will pull away now. Here's something painful but necessary to say clearly. Not everyone from your old circle is going to celebrate this with you. Some people are comfortable with you at a certain level, and when you grow past that level, it disrupts something in them. A comparison they didn't ask to make, an insecurity they didn't know they had. That's not always about jealousy in the ugly sense. Sometimes it's just discomfort, dressed up as distance. But either way, you're not responsible for managing other people's reaction to your growth. You're only responsible for continuing to grow. Have you noticed anyone getting quieter, more distant, since good things started happening for you? Let them have their process. You keep walking through your door. If this touched something real, this is exactly why the series exists. Subscribe now, because part 3 is going to show you how to protect this new chapter without shrinking yourself back down for anyone. The responsibility that comes with being seen, being noticed, carries a quiet responsibility most people don't talk about. Once you're visible, you're not just building for yourself anymore. Somewhere, someone who's still invisible, still unseen, still doing the unglamorous work in the dark. They're watching what happens to people like you. Whether you know it or not, your visibility becomes proof to them that it's possible. That doesn't mean you owe the world a performance. It just means your growth has a ripple to it now, whether you intended that or not. Who in your life might be quietly watching your journey, drawing hope from what happens to you next? The final truth for today: you've spent years being overlooked, and now you're being seen. That transition is not smooth for anyone. There's fear in it. There's imposter feelings in it. There's grief for the old familiar smallness in it. But underneath all of that is something simple and true. This is what you were preparing for the whole time. The rooms opening for you now aren't accidents. They're the natural result of everything you built when nobody was watching. And the discomfort you might be feeling right now isn't a sign you don't belong. It's just what it feels like to finally step into something your entire life has been quietly building toward. If you knew, without a doubt, that you actually earned this, how differently would you walk into the next room? You've made it through the hardest part of any transformation, the part where the new version of you doesn't fit the old shape anymore. That discomfort is temporary. What you're building is not. There's more to this journey. Part 3 goes into how to protect what you've built, how to handle the people who won't understand it, and what it actually looks like to belong somewhere you once only dreamed about. If this message is speaking to something real in you, subscribe now, because Part 3 continues exactly where this left off, and it goes even deeper. You're not imagining it. You're not imposing. You earned this seat. Walk in like you know it. You've made it through 3 parts of this message. The invisible work, the fear of being seen, the pressure to keep proving yourself. And now you're standing somewhere new, somewhere earned, somewhere real. So here's the question today. Now that you're actually in the room, what are you going to do with it? Because a seat at the table isn't the finish line. It's a tool. And what you build with it from here says more about you than how you got there ever will. Are you ready to talk about what this was actually for? The problem. Here's something that catches a lot of people off guard once they finally arrive somewhere significant. The arrival itself doesn't feel as complete as they imagined it would. You spent years picturing this moment, the recognition, the room, the validation. And now that you're here, there's a strange quiet underneath the excitement. A sense of, okay, I made it, now what? The goal that used to organize your entire effort is behind you, and nothing has automatically replaced it. Have you ever reached something you wanted for years and felt a little lost once you actually got there? That's not ingratitude. That's just what happens when you finally close one door without knowing yet what the next one is for. The seat was never the point. Here's a truth that reframes everything. The room, the recognition, the exclusive invitation, none of that was ever actually the destination. It was the platform. The seat you earned isn't the prize. It's the tool you now get to use for something bigger than getting noticed. Think about anyone whose life actually mattered beyond their own comfort. They didn't stop at being chosen. Being chosen was simply the moment their real work began. Using the platform, the access, the influence, to build something that outlasted the initial excitement of arrival. If the room you're in isn't the finish line, what do you actually want to build now that you're standing inside it? The door you can now open for someone else. Here's something worth sitting with. Somewhere right now, there's a person doing the exact invisible work you used to do, showing up without applause, believing in themselves without proof, wondering if anyone will ever notice. You are now in a position you weren't in before, a position to notice them, to be the person who finally says, "I see what you're building," to someone who's been unseen the way you used to be. That's not a small thing. For someone drowning in invisibility, being noticed by someone who made it out can be the exact moment that keeps them going. Who in your life is currently doing the unseen work you used to do? And what would it cost you to be the one who finally sees them? If this is stirring something in you, that's exactly why this series keeps going. Subscribe now, because part 5 goes even deeper into what it means to build a legacy instead of just a moment. Why affation feels. If it's the only goal, here's something important to understand now that you're being seen. If recognition was the only thing you were chasing, it will eventually feel hollow, no matter how much of it you get. Validation is a wonderful feeling, but it was never built to sustain a whole life. It fades the moment the applause stops, and then you're left chasing the next round of applause just to feel okay again. But purpose is different. Purpose doesn't need an audience to matter. If you build something meaningful with this platform, not just something impressive, but something that actually helps or changes or serves, that kind of fulfillment doesn't fade when the room goes quiet. Are you chasing the next round of recognition, or are you starting to build something that would matter even without it? The difference between being known and being trusted, being seen and being trusted, are two very different things, and it's worth understanding the gap between them now. Being known means people recognize your name. Being trusted means people believe in your character, your consistency, your word. One happens quickly, sometimes overnight. The other takes time, and it's built through every small choice you make, once nobody's specifically watching for it. The most powerful people in any room aren't necessarily the most famous ones. They're the most trusted ones. And trust compounds in a way visibility never can. Now that people know your name, what are you doing daily to make sure they can also trust it? Using your story to reach someone still stuck. Here's something worth considering seriously. Your story, the hard years, the invisible effort, the doubt, the moment it finally turned. That story is not just yours anymore. It belongs, in part, to anyone who's currently living the version of it you already survived. You don't have to turn your pain into a performance, but you're allowed to let your story become useful to someone who needs proof that their current invisible season won't last forever. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer someone isn't advice. It's simply evidence that what they're going through actually leads somewhere. If your story could reach exactly the person who needs to hear it right now, what would you want them to know? If that question moved something in you, that's exactly the heart of this series. Subscribe now, because part 5 is where we talk about turning your story into something that outlives this single moment. Why humility is your most powerful tool now. Here's something worth guarding carefully as this new chapter unfolds. The moment recognition starts flowing in, humility becomes more valuable than it's ever been, not less. It's easy to stay humble when nobody's watching. It's a completely different discipline to stay humble once people finally are. Humility doesn't mean pretending you didn't earn this. It means remembering exactly what it took to get here and refusing to look down on anyone who's still in the stage you just came from. The moment you forget what invisibility felt like, You lose the thing that made your rise meaningful in the first place. Can you hold on to exactly who you were during the hardest years, even as this new chapter unfolds around you? The legacy question. Here's the question underneath everything today. When this season eventually passes, and every season eventually does, what do you want to have been true about how you used it? Do you want to be remembered as someone who simply enjoyed being seen, or as someone who used being seen to actually change something? A life, a pattern, a door that stayed shut for too long. Both are human, both are understandable, but only one of them outlasts the applause. If this entire chapter of your life became a story someone told years from now, what would you want that story to actually be about? The final truth for today: you didn't survive the invisible years just to arrive somewhere and stop growing. This room, this recognition, this new access, it was never the ending. It was the beginning of a different kind of work, one with more weight and more meaning than simply getting noticed ever could carry on its own. You get to decide what this platform becomes, not the algorithm, not the room, not the people who doubted you. If everything you built quietly, invisibly, painfully, was actually meant to prepare you to help someone else find their own way out of the dark, would you be willing to become that for someone? You've made it further than most people ever let themselves go. Through the invisible years, through the fear of being seen, through the pressure of staying, and now into the question of what this was actually for. The answer isn't just about you anymore. It never fully was. There's one more part to this journey. Part 5 brings everything full circle. What it means to finally stand fully in who you've become, and what you leave behind for the people still watching from where you used to stand. If this message is changing how you see your own story, subscribe now, because Part 5 is where this entire series comes together. You made it into the room. Now make the room matter. Orchestrated narrative closure through circular storytelling. Orchestrated narrative closure through circular storytelling. Chosen 1. You've never put on a show like this. Now your name is in excuse rooms. You've walked through 4 parts of this message. The invisible years, the fear of being seen, the pressure to keep proving yourself, the question of what this platform is actually for. And now, here you are, standing at the end of this journey, closer to the fullest version of yourself than you've ever been. So, let me ask you the last question this series has been building toward. If everything you've been through was leading here, not to a moment, but to a becoming, are you finally ready to stop waiting for permission to be who you actually are? Stay with me. This is where it all comes together. The problem here's the last hard truth we need to sit with. Even after all this growth, all this recognition, all these doors opening, there can still be a quiet voice inside you that whispers, "What if this doesn't last?" That voice doesn't disappear the moment you arrive somewhere good. It just gets quieter, waiting for a vulnerable moment to speak up again. And if you let it, that voice will keep you from ever fully settling into what you built, always half-braced for it to disappear. Have you noticed that even in this new chapter, some part of you is still waiting for proof that it's real? That voice deserves an answer today. A final one. Why? This isn't going anywhere. Here's the truth that voice doesn't want you to hear. What you built wasn't handed to you by chance, so it can't be taken from you by chance either. Luck opens doors sometimes, sure, but luck doesn't build the kind of consistency, character, and quiet excellence that got you here. You built that, brick by brick, in years nobody was watching. Things that are built like that don't vanish overnight. They might shift, evolve, even face setbacks, but the foundation stays. because the foundation was never luck to begin with. It was you. If you truly believed this was built to last, not just to visit, how differently would you carry yourself starting today? The person you were before all of this, it's worth pausing here, at the end of this journey, to actually look back at who you were before any of this started. The person who felt invisible, who performed without applause, who wondered, some nights, if any of it mattered at all. That person is not gone. They're not someone to be embarrassed by or to leave behind entirely. They're the reason you're here. Every quality that got you into this room, the persistence, the integrity, the refusal to quit, that person built it, one unnoticed day at a time. Can you look back at who you were with gratitude instead of impatience, knowing they carried you here? What you owe the version of you almost gave up. There were nights, weren't there, where you almost stopped believing this was possible, where the invisible years felt permanent, where you wondered if you'd been forgotten, overlooked, passed by for good. You owe that version of yourself something now. Not perfection, not constant proof that it was all worth it. Just permission to actually enjoy what you built, instead of rushing past it toward the next goal, before you've even acknowledged this one. If that exhausted, doubtful version of you from years ago could see you right now, what do you think they'd want you to know? If this is touching something real, this is exactly why this series was written. Subscribe now, because there's more waiting for whatever chapter comes after this one too. The room was never just about you here. At the end, it's worth naming clearly what this whole journey was actually about. It was never only about your recognition. It was about becoming someone capable of carrying something bigger than personal achievement. Someone whose presence in a room changes what's possible for the people who come after them. Every door that opened for you widens the path for someone else walking a similar road. Every time you stay grounded instead of arrogant, humble instead of forgetful, generous instead of guarded, you're proving that this kind of growth doesn't require losing yourself. That's a gift to everyone still watching, whether they ever tell you so or not. Do you see now how your personal journey became something bigger than just your own story? Letting go of the need to explain yourself somewhere along this journey. You might have spent energy trying to explain your growth to people who doubted it, justify your success to people who questioned it, or prove your worth to people who never fully saw you in the first place. At the end of all this, you're allowed to let that need go completely. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how far you've come. Your life, your choices, your growth, they don't require a defense. They simply are what they are, and that's enough. If you stopped needing to explain yourself to anyone, how much lighter would the rest of this journey feel? The quiet confidence that comes after all of this. There's a specific kind of peace that settles into someone who has been through everything this journey covered. The invisibility, the fear, the pressure, the purpose, the becoming. It's quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need external proof anymore, because it's been tested from every angle and it held. That peace already belongs to you, whether or not you've fully claimed it yet. It's not something you have to keep chasing. It's something you get to finally rest inside of. Can you feel that quiet confidence settling into you right now, even in this ordinary moment? If you can, that's not imagination. That's just who you've actually become. What you carry forward from here as this journey closes, you're not walking away empty-handed. You're carrying everything this whole series uncovered. The understanding that invisible work matters, that fear during growth is normal, That recognition requires integrity to sustain, that platforms exist to build something bigger than yourself, and that peace was always the real destination underneath the achievement. None of that leaves you when this message ends. It's yours now, permanently, part of who you've become. As you move forward from here, which one of these truths do you think you'll need to remember most? The final truth: you were never chosen because you were perfect. You were chosen because you kept showing up, kept building, kept believing quietly when nobody was clapping. That's the entire secret behind every story like this one. Not talent alone, not luck alone, but consistency married to character, sustained long enough to finally become undeniable. Your name is in rooms you've never even walked into yet. Doors are opening in directions you can't currently trace. And the person you've become through all of this, humble, grounded, capable, real, that person is exactly who was needed for whatever comes next. So here's the last question this entire series leaves you with. Now that you know none of this was accidental, are you finally ready to walk forward like you belong here? Serious, finale, made it through this entire journey. From the invisible years nobody applauded, through the fear of finally being seen, through the pressure of staying grounded, through the purpose of using this platform for something bigger, and finally, to the quiet peace of simply becoming who you were always meant to be. None of it was wasted. All of it was necessary. And you made it through every single part of it. If this series meant something real to you, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because there's always another message waiting for exactly the moment you need it. And this channel isn't finished showing up for you yet. Walk into every room from here forward like you already belong there, because you do.